This is Pakistan's front line. The enemy, India, barely 2,000 meters away.
Center correction. 6, 8, 8.
25,000 troops struggling to survive on the roof of the world, facing an equal number of Indians.
Number 1, fire!
It's a world deprived of oxygen, where the simplest movements require huge effort. It's also a graveyard that's claimed 3,000 lives. The number one killer up here is weather and the altitude. In winter, the temperatures get down to -40. Entire patrols have been swept away by avalanches or disappeared into crevices. Others have been felled by the lack of oxygen at this high altitude. Battle casualties due to Indian fire account for a mere 5% of all Pakistan casualties. These men are on the northern end of the front line dividing the disputed state of Kashmir. While a ceasefire line was mapped out in the lower country, no one bothered to negotiate a clear boundary up here. Both sides reasoned the area was uninhabitable, and who, they asked, would want to visit the place. But in the early 80s, Indian Army mountaineering expeditions arrived, followed by armed patrols from both sides. Finally, in 1984, the first shots were fired. The Indians hold the high ground, but pay dearly for their advantage. Every day, 2 of their soldiers are killed or incapacitated by the cold and higher altitude. Pakistani gunners make life even more miserable for any Indian observers hidden on the ridgeline. Muslim Pakistan was created after the 1947 split with Hindu-dominated India. These days, the military embraces its Islamic faith with ever-increasing intensity.
القارية ما القارية وما أدراك ما القارية وما أدراك ما هي نار حامية صدق الله مولانا العظيم.
दूसरी पोस्ट के ऊपर जा रहे हैं और आपका फासला जो है काफ़ी है और ये फासला आप लोगों ने जो कि 7 घंटे में कवर करना है और जो भी बंदा जिसको भी कोई बीमार होता है तो आपके पास वायरलेस सेट है, इन टाइम हमें बताना है और उसको इन टाइम जो है इवैक्यूएट करना है.
नारे तकबीर, नारे तकबीर, इस्लाम जिंदाबाद, पाकिस्तान जिंदाबाद, पाकिस्तान जिंदाबाद.
Both sides are now well dug in. As the Pakistanis ready for another patrol, they know it's pointless attempting to seize the Indian positions. Last time they tried, 150 men died, easy targets as they lumbered up the mountainside through the snow. The brief summer is known as the campaigning season, when both sides do most of the fighting and moving of vital supplies. It's a military stalemate that has 2 of the world's poorest nations, each spending $2 million a day. By the time each piece of humble roti or bread reaches the mouths of the hungry soldiers, it has cost $20.
Oh, very tasty.
The loneliness of fighting on top of the world also takes its toll. Some embrace their faith with a passion. Others go mad, struck down by what's called Siachen syndrome, brought on by the altitude, stress, and the reality of killing the only other humans they may see in 3 long months up here. "12,000 feet below the front line, we have an appointment with one of Pakistan's Siachen commanders.
We are Muslims, we believe in jihad, and we believe in our cause. And the cause is that ours is a principal stand.
The brigadier claims India has now moved the fight down from the mountains to the heavily populated hills of Kashmir.
I would say that the enemy wants to entice us. That is why he has taken, this battle out of the Siachen area and wants to extend it southwards, not only, towards southwards in the Siachen sector, but also towards Indian-held Kashmir. Indians have also a habit to use the human beings as a shields. They force the population on the other side to be used as porters, to be used, on the jobs which are to be done on the front line for the soldiers, so that if we reciprocate, on the fire, then they are the casualties and they could later be, used, for their mischievous design.
Of course, the Indians say exactly the same things about the Pakistanis. And as we head south, down towards the warmer climes of Kashmir, it becomes apparent that the propaganda campaign is every bit as fierce as the shooting war. We're granted permission to visit the town of Atmaquam, just a few hundred metres over the Pakistan side of the so-called line of control. The only access, a 4-hour drive over a mountain pass, a track with a sheer 2,000-foot drop over the side. As we near Atmaquam, the ominous rumblings of Indian artillery pounding the town. Stray shells from the Indian guns trigger fires on the pine-clad slopes. We're ordered back behind a hill for our own safety, yet still in full view of Indian troops hidden on the next ridge.
There is a small town which is named as Atmaquam, and presently they are firing upon the civilians and civil houses, colleges. There is a degree college. They have destroyed that. And have you heard the noise of that?
Yes. What was it? What was that?
That was an artillery shell. 105 Indian field gun.
As the Pakistanis sit in their trenches, more than 300 rounds of artillery and mortar fire fall on the town, an experience made all the more disconcerting by reports that last May, India tested a nuclear artillery shell. It's not something that bears thinking about, that anyone really wants to think about, is it? A nuclear war?
Yes, we should not consider it a nuclear war. But if they open up with nuclear weapons, we have equipment to face it. We have mosques, we have bunkers, and our troops are well dug in.
Hello. As the firing dies down, the local commander emerges from a bunker, offering to show us around town.
They do not have the courage to fight a professional army, and they do not find the suitable targets, and rather I would say they don't have the courage actually to talk and to fire on our posts. And that's why, in total frustration, they target the civil population just to create the a state of insecurity and harassment in the area. That is the reason.
But again, as we approach Atmaquam, the Indians resume firing.
For your own security, actually, I wanted you to take you ahead,
yes.
but primarily because of your security,
Yes.
I would suggest to you that we should not visit the forward area because, as I told you earlier, that they do not spare anyone, right? As far as we are concerned, we are living in the area, we are fighting a war with them, we are absolutely not afraid.
Could we ask these people what they've seen?
Yes, of course.
Stop.
Running the gauntlet, a desperate group of villagers have escaped to search for food and medicine for their besieged families.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. What's happening? What's happening there now? You've just come from
हम लोग सर बड़ी मुश्किल से जान बचाकर यहाँ पे पहुंचे हैं। हमारी जिंदगी हमने ये नहीं समझा, हम जब घर से निकले हमें ये नहीं पता कि हम whether we are take our place or not, कि हम अपनी जगह पर पहुंच जाएंगे या नहीं पहुंच सकेंगे, तो ये हमें पता नहीं चल सकेगा।
Where are the women and children? Where are the women and children?
बच्चे औरतें कितने हैं?
बच्चे औरतें ऊपर जंगलों में, जंगल बियाबान एरिया में चले गए हैं।
They said that we have taken them to the places where the safe places, and we have taken them there.
So what were you doing back there today? Why were you back in the
नखरू सेक्टर में ऐसा हुआ है सर, हैं एक औरत एक दरख्त के नीचे एक हफ्ता उसको खाना नहीं मिला है।
He says that the children, the ladies, they are finding refuge behind the just underneath the trees, and they have not got their meats from the last 6 to 7 days because of this firing.
Yes, and how many people have died?
He says that something like 60 people have died in the recent these firing.
The meeting is cut short by an urgent message. Indian fire is moving towards our location. As we depart, the first rounds come hurtling overhead.
It's coming towards us now.
Yes. That's about 2 to 300 yards away from
our position.
Yes.
So you think that was just oh, there's the smoke, look.
Oh, yes.
Just say respect where we were.
Yes. I need to leave now.
This is airburst artillery. Shells designed to explode just above the ground, spraying deadly metal fragments over 200 meters.
Whoa! It's on the road.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Please follow him now. Please get inside. Please get inside. Let's leave this area now.
Just up the road at an army hospital, those who weren't so lucky.
Basically, this is an agricultural area, and either they are busy in their bazaars, doing their normal businesses, or they are cultivating something in the fields. They're not soldiers. Basically, civilians who are just caught in the enemy fire.
For the villagers, there's always been an element of danger to living on the line of control. Before 1990, there was the odd rifle shot. After Muslim Kashmiri separatists started their campaign against India, the occasional artillery shell. But since the nuclear tests in May, life has become a living hell, with tens of thousands of shells fired by both sides. The following morning, the shelling has stopped, and we finally enter Atmaquam. This once thriving community of 4,000 people is all but deserted. A handful of men remain, picking up the pieces as Indian gunners reduce their lives to rubble. What's happened here? A key target yesterday, the officers of a local political group, flying flags of support for the Kashmiri militants just over the border. India claims the guerrillas are armed and trained by Pakistan.
Yes.
They are firing at this place,
Right.
and this is the one incident which hit directly.
Would they see that as justification for shelling this town, because these people would support the guerrillas in Indian Kashmir?
No, how is it possible that they are spotting here while sitting from this place? You see, they are sitting just in front of them.
Hardly a convincing answer, but there's little doubt that many of these people simply want the fighting to stop, so they can return to the familiar rhythms of rural life. Safely out of range of the guns, refugee camps are taking on an air of permanence. Few see any chance of returning to the stunning beauty of their home valleys.
I am here from 1990 October because the Kashmiri people start their jihad with the Indian army for freedom, and the Indian army start to kill our innocent youths, and they start to gang rape with the women, and they burned our houses.
Camp leader Raja Ishaq Khan has met dozens of diplomats, aid workers and journalists. He's pessimistic about the future, and like so many here, scarred by the past. He recounts his own personal nightmare, having to smother a 3-year-old child as he fled Indian Kashmir.
We crossed 12,000 highest mountain in 5 days. We was 1,400 people. We killed a 3-year-old baby in the way because we are crossing. The Indian army was the nearest hour in the way, and baby start to weep, and we forced their boat only for 3 minutes. And when we started 200 yards behind the army, we see he was died. And I told to his mother, because we have sent your son back to his grandmother, so she don't know.
It's a harrowing tale of sacrifice and survival, but one that's impossible to verify. Raja says the mother of the dead boy now lives in the camp and takes us to meet her, warning that she's still unaware of her son's fate. Bewildered by all the sudden attention, there's very little to say. Next stop on our trek south, Islamabad, the capital of a nation now desperately racing to mount nuclear warheads on missiles. Missiles named after Muslim warlords who conquered ancient India.
It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be an arms race. I would say it's a new balance of terror in South Asia, similar to the one you had in Europe after World War II between the Soviets and the Americans, and which held the peace for 50 years.
But not everyone cheerfully subscribes to the so-called balance of terror. Strategic analyst Dr. Samina Ahmed watches Islamabad's political machinations with a growing sense of dread. Dr. Ahmed says the nuclear balance is a dangerous myth.
And in the context of India and Pakistan, it doesn't even begin to apply. This is now an extremely unsafe place. If anything has introduced an element of instability in this region, it has been a conventional arms race, and now even more so a nuclear arms race between India and Pakistan.
Information Minister Mushahid Syed is a powerful figure in the government of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. He's keen to project an image of a government in control of the mounting crisis and in charge of the military, which has dominated political life here for 50 years.
We have a regular institutional system of communication. At the political level, between the two prime ministers, there's a hotline, and also at the military level, between the military operations chiefs of both armies. So that's not a problem. We've known each other for 50 years. We have fought wars also. We've talked peace also. We have negotiated also. So we're not strangers to each other.
You have very short warning times. We've had an incident last year when an Indian fighter plane broke through Pakistani airspace. We heard the sonic boom right here in Islamabad and then went back into Indian airspace, and it could not be intercepted. And any attack means that there'll be very short warning time, and a decision has to be taken very quickly. And as we've seen in the past, neither the Indian or the Pakistani political leadership is really mature enough to take those kind of decisions under that kind of pressure. That increases the danger of using nuclear weapons in a first strike capability.
And so to our final destination, the only Pakistan-India border crossing still open, at Wagah in the Punjab. Given the killing a few hundred kilometres up the road, this is perhaps the most bizarre ritual on the subcontinent. Every day at sunset, the opposing armies engage in a kind of parade ground test match, complete with spectators. In one sense, this is the world's biggest divorce settlement. It's half a century since the British Raj was carved up into Muslim Pakistan and Hindu-dominated India. Yet they're still fighting over ownership of Kashmir. And like a divorced couple, when the formalities are over, there may be a tingling sense of nostalgia. A brief realisation that perhaps the differences were not so great after all. Maybe it's an unrealistic outlook, given the half-century of bloodshed here. But in this nuclear age, the alternative is far too terrible to contemplate.